The resilient heart-esteemed listeners, prepare to be captivated. Today we invite you into the extraordinary world of the resilient heart, a gripping tale of love forged in ambition, shattered by betrayal, and reborn through an unexpected legacy. Witness Alara's journey from selfless devotion in the bustling streets of Los Angeles and New York to finding her true north amidst the echoes of a past she never knew. Will a hidden inheritance define her future? Can a broken heart truly heal and reclaim its deepest desires? Before we begin, hit that subscribe button to join us on this unforgettable adventure. Let the story unfold. The relentless hum of the Los Angeles freeway was a constant companion to Alara, a symphony of progress she no longer heard. It was 2 weeks after the dreaded envelope arrived, its crisp corners still sharp enough to cut through the thin veil of normalcy she tried to maintain. The prestigious Paris Design Academy, full scholarship, a dream once so vibrant it had felt like a second heartbeat, now a faded photograph clutched in a trembling hand. A dream she had meticulously sculpted, brick by painstaking brick, only to watch it crumble into dust, not from a lack of talent or dedication, but from an act of quiet, almost insidious, betrayal. Her apartment, a minimalist haven she'd designed, herself with secondhand finds and boundless creativity, felt less like a sanctuary and more like a gilded cage. Sunlight, usually a welcome guest, now seemed to mock her, highlighting the dust motes dancing in the air, each one a forgotten promise, a deferred ambition. Alara traced the intricate floral pattern on a vintage Persian rug, her fingers brushing, over threads as tangled as her own thoughts. At 24, she carried the weight of a past that felt disproportionately heavy for her slender frame. Her almond-shaped eyes, often described as pools of quiet resilience, now held a haunted, faraway look, reflecting the lingering shadows of a childhood steeped in artistic melancholy and quiet sacrifice. Growing up in a small traditional Vietnamese village, Alara had always been the anomaly, the girl who saw canvases in worn wooden planks and grand designs in humble straw huts. Her parents, artisans themselves, had fostered her talent with a gentle, unspoken hope, a hope she had carried across continents. The twist, the cruel thread woven into the fabric of her life, lay in a dusty, leather-bound journal. It wasn't hers. It belonged to her great-aunt, Madame Hien, a woman Alara barely remembered, a distant, enigmatic figure who had left Vietnam decades ago for America, shrouded in a cloud of family whispers about a broken engagement and a lost fortune. The journal had arrived unsolicited, nestled amongst her mother's usual care packages of Vietnamese coffee and dried fruit, with a single cryptic note. For you, my artistic granddaughter. A legacy, perhaps, of both dreams and burdens. Alara hadn't understood the urgency then, not until a few days ago, when a lawyer's letter, stiff and formal, had arrived. Madame Hien was gone, and Alara, to her utter bewilderment, was named the sole heir. Not just to an apartment in a quiet San Francisco neighborhood, a place Alara had never seen, but to something far more perplexing. A failing antique shop, seemingly on the brink of bankruptcy, filled with forgotten treasures, and an insurmountable pile of debts. The scholarship to Paris, once her golden ticket, now felt like a cruel jest, a mirage shimmering just out of reach, overshadowed by the stark reality of inheriting a financial albatross. A sharp rap on the door startled her from her reverie. Ethan. His arrival always announced itself with a forceful, almost arrogant presence. He was the vortex around which her world had spun for the past 3 years. Tall, with an athletic build honed by countless hours in the gym, Ethan possessed a charismatic smile that could disarm armies and eyes that, in quieter moments, held a flicker of restless ambition. He was the architect of the Dreamforge app, a revolutionary productivity tool that had taken Silicon Valley by storm, turning their humble beginnings into a booming success. But success, Alara was learning, was a relentless beast, often devouring the very hands that fed it. Alara, you in there? His voice, usually warm, now held an edge of impatience. We've got the final pitch for the New York expansion in 2 days. Are the investor decks ready? You look distracted. Alara opened the door, a faint tremor running through her. Ethan, ever the pragmatic visionary, barely registered her pale face or the lingering sadness in her eyes. His gaze was already scanning the room, assessing, calculating. His tailored suit seemed to hum with the energy of billion-dollar deals, a stark contrast to her simple, faded t-shirt. Their lives, once intertwined by shared dreams and instant ramen, now felt miles apart, separated by an ever-widening chasm of ambition and expectation. I got something, Elara began, her voice barely a whisper. She gestured to the lawyer's letter and the journal on the small coffee table. My great-aunt, Madame Hien. She passed away. And she left me everything, an antique shop in San Francisco. It's a mess, Ethan. Debts, old inventory. It's almost bankrupt. Ethan's usually composed features flickered with annoyance, then a dismissive wave of his hand. An antique shop? Elara, we don't have time for this. It's probably just sentimental junk. You can deal with it later. The New York deal is everything. It's the culmination of 3 years of relentless work, your sacrifices, my vision. We can't let a dusty old shop distract us now. His words, though seemingly logical, landed like cold stones in her already bruised heart. He didn't see the weight of the legacy, the unexpected burden, the quiet desperation in her eyes. He only saw a distraction from his grand design. The contrasting forces in the room were palpable. Ethan, driven by external validation and unchecked ambition. Elara, grappling with an internal earthquake, torn between loyalty and a newfound overwhelming responsibility. The Paris scholarship letter, now a crumpled ball in her pocket, felt like a silent accusation. She had traded her dream for his, had watered his ambitions with her own deferred hopes. And now, this unexpected inheritance, a crumbling relic from a forgotten relative, was pulling her in a direction she never anticipated, a direction completely opposite to the glittering path Ethan was forging. It was a crossroads, not just of geography but of destiny. As Ethan turned to leave, already mentally reviewing his pitch, Elara's gaze fell back to the old journal. Its leather cover, worn smooth by time, seemed to hold not just dusty secrets, but a whisper of a different kind of life, a life perhaps meant for her. The choice suddenly was no longer about Paris or New York, but about honoring a legacy she never asked for, and finding a voice she had long silenced for someone else's song. And as the door clicked shut behind Ethan, leaving her alone in the quiet apartment, Elara knew, with a chilling certainty, that this inherited mess was far more than just an antique shop. It was a catalyst. The air in the Dreamforge headquarters in New York City hummed with a different kind of electricity than the LA office, a colder, sharper current. It was the hum of million-dollar deals closing, of ambition polished to a blinding sheen. Ethan, now a titan in the tech world, moved through it with a predatory grace, his days a blur of high-stakes meetings and exclusive galas. Elara, tethered to him by a thread of past promises, felt the chasm between them widen with every passing second, like two tectonic plates drifting apart. The hum often morphed into a silent roar in her ears, drowning out the quieter melodies of their shared history. She had followed him, of course. Her heart, still raw from the dual blows of the Paris scholarship and Madame Hien's perplexing inheritance, clung to the faint hope that in New York a new chapter would begin. She imagined dusty art galleries, hidden design studios, a vibrant pulse that would rekindle her own creative spirit while still supporting Ethan. But New York in Ethan's orbit was a gilded cage, not a haven. Her days, once filled with sketching grand designs and poring over fabric swatches, were now reduced to managing Ethan's increasingly erratic schedule, responding to his cryptic texts, and making polite small talk with venture capitalists, wives at receptions where the champagne flowed like forgotten dreams. Elara would often find herself in their sprawling, sterile penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, the vast expanse of glass reflecting her own shrinking world. The city lights, a glittering tapestry of ambition, seemed to mock her, each tiny beacon representing a dream someone else was living. She missed the comforting chaos of her LA apartment, the worn rug underfoot, the sunlight that felt like an Old friend. Here, the meticulously curated modern art on the walls felt cold, distant, mirroring the growing distance in Ethan's eyes. He had promised. Oh, how he had promised. Once we land the New York deal, Alara, we'll build that design studio you always dreamed of. We'll travel, explore the architecture of the world just like we planned. His words, once anchors for her soul, now floated like empty balloons in the thin, rarefied air of their new reality. He'd say them with a fleeting smile, a squeeze of her hand, before his gaze drifted to his buzzing phone, or to the next power broker walking into the room. The change in Ethan wasn't a sudden, seismic shift, but a slow, insidious erosion. It began subtly, with missed dinners. Client meeting, babe. Urgent. Order in tonight. Then, the urgent meetings extended into late nights, turning into early mornings. His phone, once a tool for their shared vision, became a fortress, a shield against intimacy. Conversations that once flowed effortlessly now felt like forced negotiations, each word a step through a minefield. His eyes, once alive with the spark of their shared dreams, now held a calculating glint, always looking beyond her to the next horizon, the next conquest. He spoke in metrics, in market shares, in exponential growth. The language of their love, once a poetic dance, had devolved into a sterile spreadsheet. One particularly harsh Tuesday, Alara found herself alone again, the echoes of Ethan's hurried goodbye still hanging in the opulent air. She'd spent the day trying to untangle a particularly messy shipment for the San Francisco antique shop, a task that felt like sifting through the archaeological remains of a forgotten civilization. The shop, Heian's heirlooms, was a tangible manifestation of her forgotten great-aunt, a woman whose cryptic journal lay untouched in a drawer, a silent testament to a past Alara still hadn't fully processed. It was a bizarre, almost unwelcome anchor to a world outside Ethan's meticulously constructed empire. While her peers in design schools across the city were immersing themselves in contemporary trends, Alara was wrestling with antique invoices and probate documents, a poignant contrast that highlighted her increasing isolation. As dusk painted the New York skyline in hues of bruised purple and fiery orange, Alara received a text. Dinner with the Chengs. Important. Don't wait up. Piake Saint. Chengs, she knew the name. Sophia Cheng, the formidable daughter of Richard Cheng, a major shareholder and board member of the very conglomerate Ethan was trying to merge with. Sophia, a Harvard MBA with an almost intimidating poise, was everything Alara was not. Polished, well-connected, a product of old money and new power. Alara had met her once, at a charity gala Ethan had dragged her to. Sophia's eyes had held a glint of shrewd assessment, a calculating gleam that had made Alara feel like a quaint, irrelevant artifact. A wave of bitter loneliness washed over Alara. She walked to the window, the city lights now a glittering mockery. She thought of her great-aunt, Madame Hien, whose faded photograph in the old journal showed a woman with strikingly similar resilient eyes, albeit shadowed by a different kind of unspoken sorrow. Had Madame Hien also sacrificed her dreams, her own path, for someone else's ambition? The thought sent a chilling tremor down Alara's spine. It was a silent, ominous echo from the past, a warning she felt but couldn't yet articulate. The next morning, the office was abuzz. The New York merger was imminent. Ethan was radiant, his energy almost palpable. He was on the phone constantly, his voice booming with confidence. Yes, Richard, absolutely. Sophia's insights have been invaluable. A truly strategic mind. Alara, busy organizing his presentation notes, felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. Sophia's insights. The words were an icy dagger, twisting in the wound of her growing insecurity. Later that afternoon, a junior assistant, a timid young man named Ben, approached Alara, his face flushed with embarrassment. Ms. Alara, I overheard something. I shouldn't, but it's about Mr. Ethan and Ms. Cheng. His voice dropped to a whisper, filled with a mixture of awe and trepidation. They're more than just business partners. Everyone in the executive lounge is buzzing about it, whispers about an engagement. After the merger is finalized, it's supposed to be a strategic alliance, a blending of empires. The world tilted. The vibrant hum of the office became a deafening roar. Ilara felt a chill seep into her bones, colder than any New York winter. An engagement, a strategic alliance. Her mind reeled, trying to reconcile the image of the passionate visionary Ethan she knew with this calculating, cold architect of corporate mergers. Was this what their love had become? A mere stepping stone for his boundless ambition? She looked at Ben, his face a mixture of pity and discomfort. "Thank you, Ben," she managed, her voice a brittle whisper. I appreciate your honesty." She walked away, her steps mechanical, the polished floors of the office building feeling like a slippery slope leading to an abyss. The grand New York skyline, once a symbol of opportunity, now loomed like a cruel, indifferent giant. The golden promises Ethan had whispered in her ear in Los Angeles now seemed like the hollow echoes of a dying star. The antique shop in San Francisco, with its musty smell and looming debts, suddenly felt like the only real thing left in her life, a fragile, dusty lifeline in a world that was rapidly turning to glass. The betrayal wasn't just a rumor, it was a cold, hard fact, whispered by an innocent bystander, setting the stage for a confrontation that would shatter everything. Ilara knew with a certainty that pierced her very soul that her gilded cage in New York was about to be flung wide open whether she was ready or not. The air in the grand ballroom of the St. Regis Hotel in New York City shimmered with 1,000 facets of light, each reflecting off crystal chandeliers and the polished smiles of the elite. Ilara, dressed in a simple, elegant gown that felt like a borrowed skin amidst the designer labels, felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. This was it. The Dreamforge merger celebration, the culmination of Ethan's relentless ambition, the supposed crowning glory of their shared journey. A strange, suffocating excitement pulsed through the room, a frantic heartbeat of wealth and power. She had come with a desperate, fragile hope, a tiny ember shielded against the fierce winds of suspicion. Perhaps Ben had misunderstood. Perhaps it was all just a business rumor, easily dismissed. Her heart, a weary traveler, yearned for the familiar comfort of Ethan's hand, the reassurance in his eyes. She scanned the opulent crowd, a sea of unfamiliar faces and forced laughter, searching for the man who had once been her anchor. And then she saw him. He stood on a raised dais, bathed in the blinding glare of spotlights, a king on his throne. Beside him, like a perfectly sculpted trophy, was Sophia Cheng. She wore a gown of midnight blue, sleek and predatory, her dark hair a cascade of polished silk, her smile a dazzling, practiced performance. The sight struck Ilara like a physical blow, stealing the breath from her lungs. This wasn't just a business partnership. This was a spectacle of possession. The CEO of the conglomerate, a portly man with a booming voice, stepped forward, microphone in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed, his words echoing through the cavernous room. "Tonight, we celebrate not just a merger of companies, but a union of vision, of ambition, and of two truly remarkable individuals. My esteemed colleague Richard Cheng and I are delighted to announce that following the successful integration of Dreamforge, our strategic alliance will be further cemented by a joyous occasion." Ilara's world began to spin. The glittering lights fractured into a million shards. Her vision blurred, the faces around her morphing into grotesque masks of curiosity and schadenfreude. She felt a sickening lurch in her stomach, as if the floor beneath her had vanished. The engagement of my daughter, Sophia Cheng, to the brilliant mind behind Dreamforge, our future CEO for the Asia-Pacific division, Ethan Thorne. The words crashed over her like a tsunami, cold and merciless. A roar of applause erupted, a thunderous symphony of congratulations and flashbulbs. Confetti cannons exploded, showering the room with glittering paper that seemed to mock her shattering world. Ilara stood frozen, a statue of grief in a kaleidoscope of celebration. Her great-aunt's crumpled journal, still in her handbag, suddenly felt like a prophecy, a warning from a past she hadn't yet deciphered. The quiet sorrow in Madame Hien's eyes in the photograph mirrored her own, a terrifying, prescient echo. Then, through the blinding glare and the deafening cheers, Ethan's gaze found hers. For a fleeting second, his triumphant smile faltered. A flicker of something, surprise, guilt, crossed his face. But it was quickly replaced by a hardened resolve, a chilling detachment. He raised Sophia's hand, a diamond blazing on her finger, and they bowed together, a picture of perfect, calculated partnership. The air felt thin, suffocating. Alara stumbled backward, the edges of the ballroom blurring. She needed to escape, to breathe. But the ballroom was a labyrinth of smiling faces, all of them suddenly seeming to peer at her, their whispers like venomous snakes. She found herself in a deserted corridor, the ornate wallpaper a dizzying pattern of her own unraveling. The sound of footsteps echoed behind her. It was Ethan. He hadn't come for her. He had merely been on his way to another interview, another photo opportunity, his tailored suit still radiating the cold success of the ballroom. "Alara," he said, his voice flat, devoid of warmth. "I didn't expect you to be here." Her throat was tight, her voice a fragile whisper. You didn't think I'd want to witness your grand announcement?" Her eyes, usually pools of quiet resilience, now blazed with a desperate, wounded fire. "After everything? After all the sacrifices? My dreams, my future, all for this?" Ethan sighed, a sound of weary impatience. His face, once so open and full of the promise of their shared future, was now a mask of polished indifference. "Alara, don't be dramatic. This is business. This is progress. Things change." He gestured, vaguely back towards the ballroom. "Sophia. She understands this world. She's part of it. We are strategically aligned. It's logical." "Logical?" A laugh, hollow and sharp, escaped her lips. "Is that what we were, Ethan? A logical arrangement? Were my sleepless nights supporting you? My dreams put on hold? My entire life devoted to your vision? Just a logical stepping stone?" Her voice cracked, tears finally brimming, threatening to spill. "You promised me a future, Ethan. A home. A life beyond the hustle. You swore you'd build me that studio, remember? In Paris, then in New York? Was that all just a lie?" His jaw tightened. His eyes, once so loving, now held a cold, almost cruel glint. "You've changed, Alara," he said, his voice hard like chipping ice. "You're not the same driven, adaptable girl who believed in me, unconditionally. You've become a burden, clinging to sentiment. This isn't the Lynn of old, Alara. This isn't who I need by my side anymore." He paused, his gaze sweeping over her, dismissing her. "We were never truly compatible. You're too emotional. You don't understand the demands of this world. Don't cling to what was. It's over." The words struck her with a force that far surpassed the shock of the announcement. A burden. She, who had given everything, was now a burden. The raw pain of betrayal was compounded by the chilling realization that he had not just fallen out of love, but had rewritten their entire history, erasing her contributions, her very essence. His dismissive tone, his utter lack of remorse, twisted the knife deeper than any open hostility could have. He was no longer the Ethan she knew, the one who had once promised her the moon. He was a stranger, cold and calculating, cloaked in success. "You've changed," she whispered, her voice barely audible, a ghost of her former self. "Not me, Ethan. You." She took a step back, then another, the distance between them growing with every beat of her fractured heart. The ballroom's distant music, once celebratory, now sounded like a funeral dirge. The glittering lights seemed to mock her, dancing on the shattered remnants of her love. She turned, not knowing where she was going, only that she had to get away. The world outside the hotel was a blur of flashing yellow cabs and the relentless, indifferent rain of a New York night. Each raindrop felt like a tear, washing away the last vestiges of her hope, her illusions. The air was thick with the smell of wet asphalt and broken dreams. She walked, aimlessly at first, the city swallowing her whole, its towering skyscrapers indifferent witnesses to her silent collapse. The pain was a living entity, consuming her, leaving behind only a hollow, echoing void where her heart once beat. She didn't cry. The tears were frozen, trapped behind a barrier of shock and utter emptiness. There was no rage, no desire for vengeance, just a profound, bone-deep weariness. The man she had loved, the one for whom she had sacrificed her, most cherished dreams had not just betrayed her, but had annihilated their shared past, disowning her entirely. He had reduced her to a forgotten footnote in his triumphant ascent. As the rain intensified, soaking her dress, blurring her vision, Alara finally reached the edge of Central Park. The trees, stripped bare by the coming autumn, stood like silent, skeletal sentinels against the city's glow. She pulled out Madame Hien's journal from her handbag, its old leather cover damp with rain and tears that weren't her own. Inside, pressed between yellowed pages, was a faded, sepia-toned photograph of a young Madame Hien, her eyes filled with a distant sorrow, standing in front of a quaint, slightly dilapidated antique shop. A legacy perhaps of both dreams and burdens. A legacy that now felt like the only solid ground beneath her feet in a world that had crumbled. Alara knew with stark clarity that she couldn't go back to the gilded cage. There was nothing left for her there. Her only path was forward, into the unknown, towards a past that was now her only future. The rain fell harder, washing away the traces of her old life, preparing the ground for a new, uncertain seed. 5 years had sculpted Alara into a woman carved from resilience and purpose. The quiet, self-sacrificing girl who had crumbled on. A rainy New York night was now a celebrated interior designer. Her name, Alara Designs, synonymous with innovative luxury and soulful spaces across the East Coast. Her office, a sun-drenched loft in Tribeca, hummed with the creative energy of her burgeoning team, a stark contrast to the sterile silence of Ethan's penthouse. She still maintained Hien's heirlooms in San Francisco, not as a burden, but as a cherished connection to her past, a quiet, flourishing sanctuary of forgotten stories and restored beauty. The dusty journal of Madame Hien, finally read and understood, had revealed a woman who had navigated her own silent betrayals, choosing independence over illusion. It was a roadmap Alara hadn't known she needed. The New York rain, once a symbol of her despair, now felt like a cleansing balm as she walked through its familiar streets. She wore her success not like a heavy cloak but like a second skin, comfortable, confident, earned. Her almond-shaped eyes, once haunted, now sparkled with a quiet fire, reflecting the vibrant life she had meticulously rebuilt. She had learned to distinguish genuine worth from glittering facade, and her inner compass now pointed due north, guided by self-respect and authenticity. The invitation had arrived a month ago, sleek and understated. Dreamforge was launching its new global headquarters in Manhattan, a testament to Ethan's relentless expansion. They were seeking a design firm to craft a space that reflected their vision for the future. It was an open call, a blind submission process. Alara had hesitated for a mere heartbeat. Then, a quiet strength, born from years of healing and building, had prompted her to submit her portfolio. It was not about revenge, but about demonstrating excellence, about proving that true value lay not in the borrowed light of others, but in the unwavering glow of one's own talent. A week later, a formal request for a meeting arrived. Alara Designs had been shortlisted. The day of the meeting arrived, cloaked in the crisp, cool air of a late autumn morning. The new Dreamforge building was a gleaming skyscraper of glass and steel, piercing the skyline like a monument to ambition. As Alara stepped into the opulent lobby, she felt no tremor of old pain, only a quiet resolve. This was her arena now, a stage where she commanded her own narrative. She was led to a sprawling conference room on the 50th floor. The panoramic windows offered a breathtaking view of the city, a vista that once represented Ethan's dominance, but now seemed to belong to everyone, including her. Seated at the head of a massive conference table was Ethan Thorne. He was older, perhaps, with faint lines etched around his eyes, but still undeniably powerful, cloaked in an aura of effortless authority. His sharp suit, the subtle gleam of his watch, spoke volumes of his continued success. Beside him sat Sophia Cheng, her face a flawless mask of professional elegance, her presence exuding a quiet, almost cold command. The diamond on her left hand still glittered, a silent testament to the strategic alliance that had shattered Alara's world years ago. The moment their eyes met, time seemed to contract. Ethan's poised demeanor cracked, just for a fraction of a second. His eyes, usually so calculating, widened almost imperceptibly, a wave of recognition washing over them, swiftly followed by something akin to shock, then a deeper, unnameable emotion. He quickly regained his composure, but the brief lapse was enough. Alara felt a strange sense of vindication, not triumphant, but profoundly peaceful. She offered him a small, polite nod, her expression unreadable. "Alara," Ethan said, his voice a shade lower than usual, a subtle tremor underlying its practiced smoothness. "Welcome. I didn't realize Alara Designs was your firm." "It is," Alara replied, her voice steady, confident, a melody of quiet strength. Her gaze swept over Sophia, then back to Ethan, holding his for a moment longer than strictly necessary. "We're pleased to be considered for such a significant project, Mr. Thorne." The presentation began. Alara spoke with a clarity and passion that resonated through the room. She presented her vision, not just for a functional office space, but for a dynamic environment that fostered creativity, well-being, and connection, elements often forgotten in the relentless pursuit of profit. She spoke of light, of texture, of the unspoken language of space, her hands moving with an intuitive grace as she articulated her design philosophy. Her portfolio, projected onto the large screen, showcased projects that were both aesthetically stunning and deeply human-centered. She was a master of her craft, a true artist who had found her voice. Ethan watched her, his usual restlessness replaced by a captivated stillness. He saw not just a designer, but the woman he had discarded, transformed. The sharp mind he had once admired, now honed to a diamond edge. The quiet resilience he had, taken for granted, now a radiant strength. He remembered his cruel words in that New York corridor, the dismissal of her as a burden, too emotional, not compatible. He remembered her brokenness, the rain-soaked figure vanishing into the city. And here she was, standing tall, an undeniable force, her very presence a living rebuke to his past arrogance. Sophia, ever pragmatic, interjected with sharp, incisive questions about budget and timelines. Alara answered them with crisp professionalism, her confidence unshakable. There was no bitterness in her tone, no lingering resentment, only competence, distilled to its purest form. Sophia, despite her initial skepticism, seemed almost impressed. After the presentation, as the other firms were dismissed, Ethan asked Alara to stay behind. Sophia gave them a quick, tight smile, then excused herself, her footsteps echoing sharply as she left the room. The silence that fell between Alara and Ethan was thick with unspoken history, heavy with the weight of what was lost and what had been found. "Alara," Ethan began, his voice softer, stripped of its corporate armor. He rose and walked to the window, his back to her, looking out at the city. I owe you an apology, for everything, for the way I treated you, for the words I said, for what I became." His voice was raw, unpolished, a rare glimpse into the man beneath the mogul. "Success. It consumed me. I lost sight of what truly mattered. I lost sight of you." He turned, his eyes holding a profound regret, a haunted sadness. "And Nien, Sophia, she's a brilliant partner, but she's not you. She doesn't have your heart, your warmth, your ability to see beyond the numbers. I regret it all, Alara. More than words can say. I know it's probably too late, but can we try again?" Alara looked at him. Truly looked at him. The man who stood before her was a shadow of the ambitious youth she had loved, yet also a stranger bearing the scars of his own lonely victory. The anger, the pain, the betrayal. They were all distant echoes now, held in a quiet, undisturbed corner of her heart. She didn't feel hatred, only a profound sense of closure. "Ethan," she said, her voice gentle, unwavering. "I don't resent you, I don't hate you. The Ethan I loved, he existed, but he chose a different path. And in doing so, he set me free." She took a step closer, her voice gaining a quiet power. "We have been on two different paths for far too long. I've found the best version of myself, a version that stands on her own feet, built brick by painful brick. I've learned that true love isn't about blind sacrifice, but about mutual respect, shared dreams, and unconditional companionship. And I have proven that I can stand strong, even thrive without you, without anyone." She looked at him, her gaze clear and unwavering. "What we had, Ethan, it was a beautiful beginning. But it ended. And the person I am now, she deserves a love that celebrates her strength, not demands her submission, a partnership, not a sacrifice." She picked up her portfolio. "I forgive you, Ethan. Truly. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or going back. My future is mine to design." With a final serene smile, Alara turned and walked out of the conference room, leaving Ethan standing alone by the window, a king, in his castle, but with a heart suddenly echoing with regret and a profound sense of loss. The city outside, a vibrant tapestry of dreams stretched before her, limitless and full of promise. She stepped into the elevator, its descent feeling like a journey into a bright, self-made future. The resilient heart had found its true north. Final thought for our audience. As Alara's journey comes to a close, remember her strength. This story reminds us that true resilience isn't just about bouncing back, it's about transforming, learning, and ultimately, choosing yourself. Your dreams, your self-worth, are invaluable. Don't let anyone diminish them. Sometimes, the most painful endings are just the universe clearing the path for your greatest beginnings. Embrace your journey, own your story, and build the life that truly resonates with your resilient heart. Thank you for listening. If this story touched you, please consider giving us a like, subscribing to our channel, and sharing your thoughts in the comments below.